came outside and they said, there it goes. And I watched it go up, and then suddenly, boom.
It's a great loss. The life, the knowledge, surely.
There were 7 victims who died today, and millions of others who still live.
Velocity 2,900 feet per second.
I'm sad. I cried, and I will cry again. I really will. I'm sorry.
Bernard Goldberg, CBS News, Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Now, using our scale model of the shuttle Challenger and slow-motion stop-action videotape of the accident in space, let's try to go over once again just what happened. First to the model. You can see that the Challenger on either side has the solid rocket boosters, the tanks that hold the rubber-like solid fuel. The large orange tank is the main liquid fuel tank. Now, we'll rotate the model just a bit to roughly the position the Challenger was in just before the explosion. What we're seeing now is stop-action footage of the mission, just about 1 minute and 11 seconds in. We see the shuttle and one of the solid rocket boosters. At this point, a small flame leak is already visible in between. As we roll this ahead in slow motion, another flame leak appears above about 1 second later. Then, scant tenths of a second later, a large clear flame, and then the last massive explosion. The Challenger enveloped in a terrible fireball over the next 3 seconds. Finally, just past
Launched in flight. We will try to answer many of your questions, but as of this evening, many questions remain unanswered. We begin at Cape Canaveral with ABC's John Quinones.
They gathered for what turned out to be their last meal at 6:48 this morning, the ceremonial breakfast. For months, they had trained together. Astronaut Allison Onizuka from Hawaii, the star of this mission, New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe, mission commander Dick Scobie, pilot Michael Smith, astronauts Judith Resnick and Ronald McNair, and payload specialist Gregory Jarvis. After 3 days of delays, they appeared tired, but quickly rejuvenated by applause as they headed for the launch pad.
Scobie, followed by mission specialist Judy Resnick, Ron McNair, and pilot Mike Smith, followed by Krista McAuliffe, teacher in space, Ellison Onizuka, and payload specialist Greg Jarvis.
Final preparations before liftoff. The ground crew gives McAuliffe an apple for the teacher, and wishes of good luck. Initially, liftoff was scheduled for 9:38 this morning, but again there were problems. A hard freeze overnight left ice on the launch pad, a 2-hour delay, and then NASA discovers a faulty fire detector on board the shuttle, another hour's delay while it's replaced. Finally, the liftoff was set for 11:38. A crowd of some 500 spectators, including 18 visiting school children from McAuliffe's hometown of Concord, New Hampshire, waited anxiously and then counted down. The liftoff appeared flawless. The spectators, including Krista McAuliffe's parents, Grace and Edward Corrigan, watched proudly through tears of joy. 65 seconds into flight, NASA Control orders Commander Scobie to go to full power.
Challenger, go at throttle up. Challenger, go at throttle up.
Suddenly, an explosion.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
NASA loses all communication with Challenger, but the crowd still does not realize that something's gone wrong. Within seconds, Challenger disintegrates.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded.
For the spectators and Krista McAuliffe's parents, joy turns to confusion, worry, and a realization of tragedy. The $1.2 billion spaceship, its 7 crew members, and their satellite payload disappear.
I thought the flight was going fine. And then I heard them say major malfunction. And then the person beside me said it's exploded. And it was I couldn't speak. It was...
Within minutes, emergency rescue teams parachuted in, converging on a search area 18 miles east of Cape Canaveral.
Debris continued to fall for 50 minutes and more, and obviously you can't send aircraft and ships into an area where debris is falling, where they themselves may be endangered.
Late this afternoon, after 6 hours of searching, NASA reports they found no survivors.
These searches have not revealed any evidence that the crew of Challenger survived.
Tonight, NASA and Cape Canaveral are in mourning. Tonight at Cape Canaveral, Vice President George Bush, accompanied by Senators Jake Garn and John Glenn, both former astronauts, expressed the nation's condolences to the families of the astronauts. Bush had a special message for American school children.
You must try to understand that spirit, bravery, and commitment are what make not only the space program, but all of life worthwhile. We must never, as people in our daily lives or as a nation, stop exploring, stop hoping, stop discovering. We must press on.
John Quinones, ABC News, Cape Canaveral.
This whole concept of a teacher in space has been important to the country, but especially to the children, as the Vice President alluded ever since President Reagan in 1984 suggested there be a teacher in space. It was going to be a very big day in Krista McAuliffe's hometown of Concord, New Hampshire, and especially at the high school where she taught. ABC's Jay Shadler was there.
Krista McAuliffe's students and friends at Concord High School were ready to watch a dream come true this morning. Instead, they became witnesses to a nightmare.
2, 1, and liftoff.
In the moments after the launch, their celebrations drowned out the first news of the tragedy. But the clamor turned to quiet as this picture burned itself into their memories.
Reports from the flight dynamics officer indicate that the vehicle apparently exploded and that impact in the water.
Some people were covering their eyes, and some people were just watching the TV set with a blank look on their face.
It was really quite dramatic. At first, you know, everyone was really happy, all these smiles, and then suddenly you saw a lot of people crying in the halls, and it was really pretty sad.
Just moments before, Eileen O'Hara, Krista McAuliffe's good friend and classroom substitute, had shared this haunting sentiment with a local reporter.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to watch because I want her to be safe and I want her to have fun.
Now the public celebration had turned into private mourning and shock.
She was a part of us. She was part of a family. And just like if your sister or brother died, she'll be remembered. It was a hell, just a hell.
Though Krista McAuliffe's students and friends have known her here in Concord for years, she became known to the nation when she decided to pursue her dreams. Those dreams had been sparked by President Reagan's announcement a year ago for a teacher astronaut. The search for that history maker brought 11,000 applications, but only one made the final grade.
And the winner, the teacher who will be going into space, Krista McAuliffe.
From the outset, she approached this mission and her training with the same ideals she brought to the classroom.
Well, it was a challenge, and it was something that I always ask my students, you know, to go and seek whatever they feel they can do and reach a little higher.
She wore her spirit on her face, and her hometown loved it.
Difficult to say.
Now they are remembering it. A special counselor will be brought to Concord High tomorrow to help students begin dealing with their loss. But perhaps Krista McAuliffe's own words echo the best advice.
To follow your instincts and go for your dreams, and I hope they achieve that.
Jay Shadler, ABC News, Concord, New Hampshire.
When Challenger was 10 miles up and 18 miles down range and that explosion occurred, we all knew a great deal about Krista McAuliffe, but we've become so accustomed to the shuttle going up and coming down now that the other astronauts on board were just not as well known to us. Well, they are today, and ABC's Stone Phillips has been looking at them.
When they posed, it was like a portrait of America. Men and women, war veterans and first-time astronauts, parents, and even a classical pianist. Their commander was Francis Scobie, age 46, from Washington State, an astronaut after 22 years in the Air Force. This was his second shuttle mission. Second in command, pilot Michael Smith, age 40, a decorated Navy pilot from North Carolina. Like Scobie, he'd seen combat in Vietnam and trained as a test pilot. And like the commander, he was a husband and father. This was Smith's first shuttle mission. Mission specialist Ellison Onizuka was the first Hawaiian astronaut who believed in the benefits of the space program.
There are a lot of outcomes from these projects which will affect both our society and the rest of the world.
Onizuka is survived by his wife and 2 daughters. 36-year-old mission specialist Judy Resnick was a shuttle veteran, her assignment to operate the shuttle's mechanical arm. She was on board the shuttle Discovery in 1984 when a launch was aborted after the engines had fired. Gregory Jarvis was on board to conduct tests on the effects of weightlessness on liquids carried in tanks. Born in Detroit, trained as an Air Force satellite engineer, Jarvis was on his first shuttle mission. Ronald McNair, age 36 from South Carolina, brought a background in physics and laser technology to the shuttle program. This was the second trip to space for a husband and father who saw space travel as a calling for mankind.
I see it as something that we must do, and I see it as something that's part of man's nature to explore.
These 6, along with Krista McAuliffe, the first teacher in space, now a tragic page in NASA history. Stone Phillips, ABC News.
When we come back, we'll try to analyze what happened. It isn't easy. Officials came out of Cape Canaveral and made an official statement. There was an incredible anxiety that many people in the nation seem to feel about getting an answer to what had really happened. Well, the real answer may be a very long time in coming, but ABC's Lynn Scher, who covers space for us on a regular basis and has for a long time, is with us tonight in our Los Angeles bureau. Lynn?
Well, Peter, all the NASA experts, those review boards, are certainly going to check all the data they can gather, and they are going to be looking at all the pictures they can see. And those are the exact same pictures that we have been looking at also, and we've been taking a closer look at those last tragic moments. Here you see what they call a nominal ascent. All those words, textbook, picture perfect, and then suddenly a tiny flame just where the fuel lines go from the big external tank into Challenger itself. On the left with the arrow, a plume where gases from the tank are forming, obviously feeding the fire. Now you will see the flame creeping up the external tank in between the tank and the shuttle itself. This is the beginning of the huge catastrophic explosion that absolutely engulfs the entire system. You will see a second explosion right at the top of that big external tank. This is obviously what put the entire thing into flames and probably what destroyed the shuttle almost instantly. Now for a moment the smoke clears and we see emerging apparently the top of Challenger. We think this is the last picture we have ever seen of Challenger before it fell to the sea with its precious cargo. And as the sequence is going to continue, you will see that mammoth, horrible explosion on the right. One of the solid rocket boosters split away now from the tank and the shuttle itself. These boosters cannot be controlled once they're lit, so it has obviously gone off on its own into the wrong place, but it does not appear, I repeat, appear from what we can see that it was the cause of the explosion or that anything happened to it. So that's the sequence. We can see that. We can try to understand it. What we don't know is why it happened, and that's what we now need to find out. Peter?
Lynn, thank you very much. Joining us tonight from Houston is the former astronaut Gene Cernan from the Apollo program, and he also has seen this same sequence repeated many times throughout the day. Gene, I know your reluctance to speculate and share it with you, but do you see anything in those pictures which give us a clue?
Well, I think the analysis Lynn presented, the only one we have to work with because, you know, we don't have access to the data. It would take even us, if we had the time, weeks and weeks to analyze it, but just simply from the pictures, it sounds to me like her analysis, as it was portrayed, has got some substance to it. We can't answer why. We don't know why. We don't know why it might have happened, but from those pictures we might very well be able to see what happened. Remember that tank that you referred to is carrying thousands and thousands of pounds of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. Hydrogen is a propellant that burns, that explodes. Liquid oxygen is the oxidizer, like air, which supports the fire, which allows it to burn. And if you burn it as a controlled substance, if you do it and you burn them together properly like you do in engines, it's an ally. But when you allow them to join in an uncontrolled atmosphere, what can happen?
Gene, very quickly, I'm afraid, but can you tell us why there was no escape mechanism on board today?